Hello there, music lovers, and thanks for stopping by the channel and for checking things out over here and subscribing and commenting and all that good stuff. I really do appreciate all that. And in this video, I want to talk about Billy Joel. He just completed his 100th show at Madison Square Garden. That's right, 100 shows at that venue ever since he first got started playing Madison Square Garden in 1978. Now, of course, he has added some fuel to the fire recently by playing there practically every month for the past 4 years. He began a residency in 2014. He basically was like, look, I'm getting old. I don't want to go touring around. I don't want to go playing around. I'm just going to start doing shows at Madison Square Garden so I can sleep in my own bed at night, because he lives in New York. And so he's like, I'm going to keep doing a show a month at Madison Square Garden until demand goes away. And 4 years later, demand has not gone away. People love to go see him. So every month for the past 4 years, he's been doing shows at Madison Square Garden. And this 100, like I said, represents 40 years worth of shows. And Billy Joel is one of my all-time favorite artists. Love the guy. He probably was one of the first artists that I ever started really listening to seriously and getting into and appreciating. I have to thank my father for that. He was a really big Billy Joel fan back in the 70s, and so I was always listening to his songs and everything. And I guess, you know, since I was born in Brooklyn and Billy Joel's from New York, there's a lot of themes of New York that kind of run through his songs, but there's also a lot of human elements. There's a lot of good, really good lessons and lots of things that have really connected with me, which I'm going to get into. You know, 100 shows at Madison Square Garden, especially the last 4 years, what he's done with this residency, it's just amazing. And it's really a testament to the kind of artist that he is. You know, I've done videos about Paul McCartney, talking about how he's the greatest songwriter probably that's ever lived, in terms of, you know, connecting with the most people, having these timeless songs. I've even thrown out names like Ray Davies, Bob Dylan is in that list. And of course, I think that Billy Joel is one of the greatest songwriters of all time. When you take a look at the kinds of songs that he writes that connects with people of any age, across any culture and any generation, the songs that he created back in the 70s and in the 80s, they still connect with people now just as easily. And I think that that says a lot. And I think the fact that he can sell out Madison Square Garden every single month for the past 4 years, his songs are timeless. You're going to hear Billy Joel going into the future. I even think his greatest hits album is one of the biggest selling albums of all time, next to like the Eagles' greatest hits and like Michael Jackson's Thriller. I got to also give Billy credit for stopping when he felt like he really could not write really good songs. You know, he stopped around 1993. The River of Dreams, that album that came out in 93, that was his last album. And he just felt like, you know, he couldn't write pop music. He just felt like it wasn't there, and he wanted to do some other things. He wrote some classical pieces, and then he's just been going out and doing what he enjoys, which is actually performing, and he's really, really good at that. He's done a lot of speaking engagements at colleges and stuff like that, and he's a really good speaker, a really good public speaker. He's very, very funny and really knows how to engage the audience. Billy Joel's a very, very talented guy. And like I said, I have to admire him for walking away from writing songs and just saying, you know what, I'm not going to write more songs. Because if he had, and they weren't good, we'd have about 25 years. The last 25 years would have been filled with a bunch of albums that sounded like shit and a bunch of songs that we don't want to hear. You know, when he goes out now and he plays, it's all killer. You know, he's digging from his pretty much his best stuff is all that he ever did, because he's got a very solid catalog. And Billy Joel's lyrics have always found a way to kind of hit me, and to, you know, I've always found like I really associated with Billy Joel's lyrics. You know, and I'll give you an example of the last time that one of Billy's songs really, really touched me. It was not too long ago, actually. I was in a relationship with this woman who had just come out of a relationship of many, many years, and she was just, you know, finding it very hard to, you know, fall in love again. She was finding it very hard to trust and to kind of put herself in a position where she could get hurt again, you know. And the song Innocent Man came up. She heard it when she was going to work, and she sent it to me as like, what do you think of this? And and I knew the song. I had known the song for 30 years, but this was the first time that I realized that the song was written for me. I mean, it sounded like it was all about me and what I was going through. The song is about a guy who's trying to console a woman who, was wronged by a lover and finding it hard to trust again. And he's trying to, and he's basically paying the price because he's getting punished for the stuff that somebody else did. And so I found a lot of stuff in that song, lyrics like, I know you're only protecting yourself. I know you're thinking of somebody else, someone who hurt you, but I'm not above making up for the love you've been denying you could ever feel. I'm not above doing anything I can to restore your faith. Lots of things like those kinds of things just hit me. It was almost like the song was a shoe that I was able to put my foot into after many, many years. Songs have this way of kind of, connecting and making you feel like you're not alone. And that's one of the things I felt was like, because sometimes people will feel like, this only happens to me, like, why does this only happen to me? And does anybody else know what I'm feeling? And so sometimes a song can make you feel like, what, I'm not alone. This is something that other people have experienced. And, Innocent Man is definitely one of my favorite songs. I've got a playlist that I'm going to make to go along with this video. These playlists that I often do are kind of like the soundtracks to these videos. So I will put that downstairs for you. So the first concert that I ever saw in my life was actually Billy Joel. It was back in 1979 on the 52nd Street tour. That was really, really cool. And I'll get to a little bit more about that. But I'm not going to do a full set list review for this show. I usually do that for tours. This is just like a one-off show. Next month when he plays MSG, he'll probably do a bunch of different songs. But I wanted to kind of just run through some highlights. And so he does Only the Good Die Young, which is a great track from the Stranger album. It was a big hit. And I remember when it first came out, there was a lot of controversy about it because he talks about Catholic girls not giving it up. And, because the song is about a guy, he's trying to, get his girlfriend to maybe go further than she's willing to for whatever reason. And he talks about Catholic girls in it. And he says that it's not so much an anti-Catholic song as it is a pro-lust song, which I thought was a funny way of putting it. I always loved the line, I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. The sinners have much more fun. That was just great, Then there's a song that he did called Zanzibar, which is a great deep cut from the 52nd Street album about a guy who goes to a sports bar, is trying to pick up on the waitress. And that's a great jazzy kind of song. And like I said, Billy Joel has got a lot of great albums in terms of them being solid. You look at albums like The Stranger and 52nd Street and Glass Houses and Nylon Curtain. I mean, they're very, very solid albums. You can pick pretty much anything from those albums and you'll have a great concert track that people are going to love. And Zanzibar is no exception. I will put that down below in the playlist. Then Bruce Springsteen comes out for a surprise appearance and he plays with Billy. They do 10th Avenue Freeze Out and Born to Run. And one of the things in common between Bruce and Billy is that they both have really good bands. The only difference is that Bruce named his, of course, the E Street Band. Billy Joel never gave his band a name, but they should have had a name. Actually, Billy's longtime producer, Phil Ramone, gave them a name, the Lords of 52nd Street. Billy had this great band of guys from New York, like Richie Cannata on saxophone, Russell Javers on guitar, and especially Liberty DeVito on drums, who I consider to be one of the best drummers ever. Now, I saw these guys when I saw them live in 1979 on that 52nd Street tour. Couldn't keep my eyes off of Liberty DeVito. He's such an energetic drummer, full of life and passion. He pounds the hell out of his drum set. And he kind of like reminds me of like almost a Muppet from like Animal from the Muppets or something. He's just very, very animated. You go back and listen to those albums that I just talked about, and as much as Billy Joel did great things with his lyrics and craftsmanship of the songs. Liberty and those other guys, they really helped to breathe life into them. And you go back and listen to the drums on those songs, and they're very, very tight. And I'm going to put a link down to some videos. You can see what I'm talking about. You go back and you look at like Billy Joel live from Long Island, pretty much anything that Billy did with Liberty and those guys, full of energy. It's a totally different vibe than what you get now with Billy's band. And I'm not saying that Billy Joel's band now is bad or anything. It's just that it's got a whole different vibe to it. It's just not the same as it used to be when he had the classic lineup and he had Liberty DeVito there. I'm fortunate that I got to interview Liberty back in 2008. We did an email interview. I'll put a link to it down below. He gives lots of great insights into his time working with Billy. I even asked Liberty if he had any cool bootlegs of his own, and he told me that when he got divorced, his wife wiped him out. So I offered to send him a bunch of what I had, and so he was real appreciative. I sent him a nice care package of bootlegs, you know, great shows that have never been released officially that he was on, that I'm sure he would have loved. And I got a chance to meet Liberty last summer, actually, because he is currently playing in a band called the Lords of 52nd Street, which is a band with Richie Cannata and Russell Javers, which is Billy Joel's old band. And they play quite frequently on the East Coast, particularly in the Northeast. So if you live around New York and New Jersey, you should check them out, the Lords of 52nd Street. Really great show. They're not a Billy Joel tribute band so much because a lot of those guys were in the band. They got this guy that sounds like Billy Joel and even looks like him a little bit too. So definitely check them out. And another song that Billy does in this 100th show at Madison Square Garden is Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, which is one of my all-time favorite songs. I mean, it's just a very well done song. Billy kind of modeled it after side 2 of the Beatles' Abbey Road album, which basically was, you know, Paul McCartney and John Lennon, they had these songs that were not finished. They didn't know what to really do with them. So George Martin helped them to kind of stitch them and make this one long medley. And Billy had a similar take for this song. He had this idea called the Ballad of Brenda and Eddie, which were these high school sweethearts who, you know, they fell in love, they went to the prom, and they got married, and then they got divorced and all that stuff. And so Billy he didn't want to just jump right into that. He wanted to kind of set it up. And so the song starts off with this, you know, these man and a woman at a restaurant, you know, bottle of red, bottle of white, just kind of talking about the old times. And then it goes into this second section, which is kind of like the calendar flipping back in time, like going back over the old days. And then we get into the story, and it's just really brilliant the way that he words everything and ties everything in. Scenes is a really, really awesome song, and I just love the horns on it. You know, the saxophone and the arrangement of the horns. It's just really, really brilliant. Then Billy does Piano Man, which of course is a signature song, which is about his early days. You know, when Billy Joel put out his first album, Cold Spring Harbor, it was mastered wrong. It was mastered way too fast, and it actually sounded like Billy Joel was on helium, and he was upset with it. But he was locked into this contract, and so he decided to escape. He wanted to like ride it out, so he left and he went to the West Coast. Which is something you really couldn't do nowadays. Like, you can't go anywhere nowadays. People will find you. But back in the 70s, you could go anywhere you wanted to and hide out. And so he basically went to LA, and he, you know, was working in a piano bar. And this song, Piano Man, is about his experiences playing in a piano bar, you know, and a lot of the people that are in the song are real people. You know, talks about Davey, who's still in the Navy, talks about Paul, who is this real estate guy who's writing a book, and this other guy who tells him, you know, what are you doing here? You know, gives him a tip and is like, you know, you're too good to be here. And talks about a waitress who I believe became his first wife. And so it's a really cool song. Again, I love the way Billy takes these real life experiences, and he just has this way with words, and very well done song. And then, of course, after the whole LA thing kind of wears off, he decides he wants to get away from the whole LA West Coast thing, and decides to go back home. That's where you get songs like, Say Goodbye to Hollywood. And then, of course, New York State of Mind, which was his, longing to go back to the East Coast. And to me, New York State of Mind is a timeless classic. Like, it is a love letter to New York City. And it sounds like the song could have been written for Frank Sinatra or a Tony Bennett. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to put a link below to Tony Bennett singing with Billy when Billy closed out Shea Stadium, which I talked about briefly at the end of my Paul McCartney video. It just has this timeless, classy kind of a sound to it. If you're from New York, then the lyrics speak to you. You know everything that's in it and what it's all about. Always did love that. And then one of the encores, he kind of wraps the show up with We Didn't Start the Fire, which is probably one of the weakest songs in his catalog. I never really was crazy about it. It's kind of a fun song, but it kind of gets annoying after a while. And the reason why Billy came up with that song was because he was having a conversation with like a 20-something. Billy was like 40 at this time, back in the early part of the 90s. He was having a conversation with a 20-something who basically told Billy, look, nothing happened when you grew up in the 50s. That was boring. Like, nothing went on. And Billy was like, well, wait a minute. We had the Korean War. We had all these different things, all these problems. And he started going through it, and it became... He just put together this song with all this, like this laundry list of things that happened. It just so happened to also coincide with the Cold War. When the song came out, that's when the Soviet Union kind of changed a lot. And so the song actually covers this 40-year period that was the Cold War by accident. That just happens to be when Billy did it, because that's the life that he led. And so that was pretty interesting. So let me know what you guys think. What do you think of Billy Joel? What do you think of his music? What do you think about his songs? Do you have any favorites? What do you think about 100 shows at Madison Square Garden, particularly the residency that he's been doing for the past 4 years? Every month plays at this venue. And like I said earlier, I think it says a lot. There are not many artists who can set up shop in New York City and have people come see them to the point where the venue is going to say, yes, we must sell tickets month after month for years. All right, so put it down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like it. And by the way, when I tell you to give it a thumbs up, it's because the more you do that, the more that you do that and make comments, the more that you engage, the more that this video gets out there in front of other fans who may enjoy it just as much as you. So it's really important. And so, as Billy Joel would say at the end of every live show, good night and don't take any shit from anybody.